For some reason that's not... hello and welcome to the Borg Skeptic Show. I'm just trying to work out why we haven't got... I think that's it. I think that's fixed. There we go. Sorry about that. A little bit of technical issue there.
Live?
Yeah, we're live now. Yeah, so welcome to the Borg Skeptic Show. Now I've finally got the pictures issue sorted. Today we have Fad, not Skids the Clown, which the intro said. Sorry about that.
If only.
So we've got Fad as our co-host again, and our guest today is Almost Atheist. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Hello, hello.
So, a little bit different today. We're going to be taking questions from the chat, and it's going to be a little bit of a general discussion about different topics. So if you have any questions you want to ask or any topics you want us to talk about, please feel free to leave them there, and we'll have a chat about them. So first of all, would you like to introduce yourself, Almost Atheist?
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, my name here on YouTube is Almost Atheist, but my real name is Jared, so you can feel free to call me that if you'd like.
Yeah.
I was born in as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and so that's my background, and I started fading in 2013 and was disassociated at the end of last year.
Oh, that's quite a long time between fading and being disassociated. So,
absolutely.
What was it like during those years?
Well, I started off. I like to say that I left on instinct. So when I first started fading, I hadn't done any research. I just felt that something was off. I felt that something was wrong. And I knew that while I wanted to leave, I also wanted to keep in contact with my family. So in order to do that, I faded rather than disassociating myself or allowing myself to get disfellowshipped. So the time in between was a mixture of not having done research. So to some degree, I was mentally in. And then at the same time, wanting to hold on to my family as long as I could.
And that's obviously one of the hardest parts about leaving Jehovah's Witnesses is they do cut you off completely off from your family.
Yeah.
So it must have been a tough few years for you in that respect.
Definitely a tug of war. I think one thing that sometimes gets overlooked is that even as you're fading, or have successfully faded and it's just sort of on autopilot, you're still not treated the same as when you were an active witness.
Mm.
So while fading allows you some freedom to have the time with your family or perhaps even your friends, there's still that feeling of distance, at least for me. There was a feeling of distance and almost a tug of war throughout the years, trying to be accepted, knowing that my family wasn't going to accept me. So by the time I got disassociated, and they just wouldn't speak to me anymore. To be very honest, it wasn't all that much of a difference by the time that actually happened.
Mm.
Fair
Yes.
on that.
So it was probably a lot more hard for you because in that respect because you could see people starting to shun you a little bit. So I can imagine that is quite difficult. So I never went through that because I was disfellowshipped right from the beginning. So I never actually went through that. So with disassociation, how does that feel now for you?
I mean, it feels great. I can't lie about it. I in the back of my mind, I always think about the collateral damage, which is losing my family and people that were almost like family to me in a way. But realistically, I'm free,
Mm.
and not only free from there's a longer story to this, but in short, I realized I needed to disassociate because I wasn't truly free. Fading wasn't enough for me. I recognized, especially because of the pandemic, I recognized early last year that religion still had a very strong hold on me, especially the fear factor. That I was still afraid of dying at Armageddon, still afraid of God killing me. So um, when I realized that that's what I needed to do, it was a turning point for me. And now that it's actually done, it feels great because now I'm actually free. It feels different.
So we have a couple of questions from the chat here. First, I'm going to go with Skids the Clown, who's asking, "What exactly do you mean when you say fading?"
Yeah, great question. So fading is a phrase that's used to refer to leaving the Jehovah's Witness organization, or I suppose it could be argued any religion that would excommunicate people. When you leave, so you stop attending church, you stop attending what we call meetings. You're not knocking on doors anymore. You're no longer an active member. Internally, from an official perspective, the organization would refer to it as being inactive. So when you're just not going anymore, but you have not formally left, whether that's disassociating, which is what I did, or being disfellowshipped, which is an action taken by the organization and excommunicating somebody, then it's referred to as fading.
See, I told you I wish I was Skids the Clown. That was a great question.
Yeah, and then Susan Brewer is asking, "Are you currently totally shunned?"
Susan, hello, hello. So yes, absolutely. It's interesting how it went down actually because so I'd known that I wanted to disassociate. I actually had been thinking about it for years, but I hadn't made the move because I wanted to hold on to my family as long as I could. But through a variety of other circumstances, I realized now was the time. And so I was having this conversation with my mom on the phone, and I didn't even intend to tell her in that conversation, hey, by the way, I'm going to be disassociating myself, because I hadn't pulled the trigger on that yet. But it just came out in sort of a heat of the moment kind of situation. And so when I said that, her last words to me were right after I told her that's what I was going to do. She said, "Oh, well, don't blame us. That's your choice that you're making, and you know what decision we're going to make." Then she hung up on me and hasn't spoken to me since. So I'm pointing that out because not only am I totally shunned, but she was shunning me before the disassociation had taken effect. It wasn't even official yet, and she already started shunning me. So it is complete.
The fear factor for her had already set in from the second that you said, and
The apostate alarms were going off, you know.
yeah, the apostate alarms, especially as like this year they seem to be upping the game a little bit on jw.org, trying to get witnesses to actively shun family members and
Yeah.
that a lot more.
I don't keep up with any of that, but why do you think that is? Why are they rising up on the shunning right now?
It's a good
I'm
question.
sorry, was that for me?
I think either
It's
of us can
for-
answer. If you've
yeah,
got an
yeah.
answer, give an answer.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
I'm sorry, I was looking for you, and then I realized maybe maybe it's muted. No, I what pops into mind is referral. In sales, for example, depending on the industry, a fair percentage of sales comes from referrals. And so I would say in this case, a fair percentage of people who wake up or leave the organization could very well be from people who have done the same already and said, hey, by the way, take a look at this, do this research. That's my guess. What do you guys think?
Mm. Yeah, I would agree with that myself as well. I think that's a
It's hard for me to know because it's such an official thing. It seems like there are very official. Yeah, everything seems so official with you guys. Whenever, because I come from, like I said, from the Baptist background, and yeah, maybe you're shunned like socially, but they're never gonna like kick you out of the church, I guess, unless I don't know. I've never technically been kicked out of a church. I guess you could get kicked out if you were causing a disturbance or something, but they're always going to try to welcome you back in, somehow at least. So to be completely shunned to me because like your religion to push you away and say no, you're not allowed to be a part of this it's just something that's hard for me to grasp.
Yeah, you can draw similarities between Jehovah's Witnesses and Christianity in general a lot of the time, but there is certain aspects, especially with the shunning and disassociation, disfellowshipping, the small subtle rules that they have, which make it very different, in my opinion, to a lot of the mainstream Christianity that we see out there. In some respects, it's a little bit closer to the Eastern faiths like Islam and things like that, in the harshness of how they go about putting that doctrine down.
Yeah. No, I think that it would be taught through I probably have been taught to take that as a chance to recruit, to help somebody come back to God. There was never a point, at least, that I had ever seen that anybody was ever completely like cut off. Like I said, that I just don't imagine what you could do in a Protestant church that would make them tell them to where they tell you not to come back into the church or anything like that, to be completely shunned.
Well, it's interesting to think about, not only is it, as far as Jehovah's Witnesses are concerned, not only is it in one church or one congregation, anywhere you go, granted those people wouldn't specifically know that you're excommunicated or disfellowshipped, what have you.
Yeah.
But you'll know. And so you're not even made to feel as though you could go to a different church. And also from a witness perspective, if it was the organization talking, it would also be, and footnote, you can't go to any other church without joining false religion, and then you'll die too. So there's no path to redemption outside of being a witness once again. And I think that's one thing that if most churches probably wouldn't do it, because part of what they teach is the idea that everyone's forgiven for their sins. So it's interesting that other churches not having excommunication in the way the witnesses do makes them a better buy in some ways.
Yeah. And of course, KCA Randy's pointing out there that Mormons are also shunned in the same way that Jehovah's Witnesses do, in a sense. So there is other things, but I would say the Mormons and the JWs sort of fall under a cult category of religion. So these similarities there, and because it's not necessarily mainstream religion, it's what you would call a cult. And a lot of cults have that same shunning sort of thing. You know, you either go with what the group wants, or that's it, bye, you're out, and you lose everything. You know, that fear factor is a major thing. Susan was making a good point there, I think, in the chat as well. She was saying, I think since JW kids are just about the only newly indoctrinated, the fear factor of being shunned by family is being ratcheted up to slow the exodus.
Yeah.
Just checking out this chat.
Oh, we've got a lovely chat going today. Quite a lot.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of there's a lot of love for you in the chat at the moment, Jared.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, we've got. I'm sorry you have to deal with that. Almost Atheist from KCA Randy, and Susan Brewer's saying, "Hey, sweetie," and then tears and tear faces.
Well, thank you for that kind message there. I appreciate that. No one should have to go through it. I'm fortunate it's easier for me than for some.
Now, I will say, like, of course, family members and socially, that aspect definitely is there. And that aspect I can relate to you on that. It's just per, like, the church and the organization, I think that kind of goes against how they preach their message. But yeah, definitely being shunned by family and things like that. Like, I've recently had to deal with that, and everybody's known that I haven't believed for like over a decade. So it's a never-ending battle with, you know, family and friends that believe.
Yeah,
I'm curious Sorry about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'm curious to know how either of you feel about this. Is it harder, whether it's a newfound thing or years long? Is it harder being shunned and having to deal with the distance between you and whoever it is that's doing the shunning that assumably you care about, to think of them in that context? Is it harder during a pandemic? Is it harder when, you know, everything else is kind of harder at the same time, if that makes any sense?
I think in some instances it's made it harder. In some instances it's made it easier. I think for at least my personal situation, it depends on the situation. You know, my family that's further away, like maybe they don't care so much about what I'm doing, or if I'm being destructive in their eyes, because they'd rather just me be safe, and they'd rather be able to see me and me them. But people that are a little bit closer to you, that you're still able to see and stuff, maybe I just still get a little bit more of that judgment.
Yeah.
Or at least from what I've experienced. What about yourself, Almost Atheist? Would you say you've experienced the same, or?
Well, what's unique for me is that the announcement of my disassociation was either late November, or no, actually it was just early December, December 10th, if I recall. I have to remember to mark that on my calendar for a celebration this year. But, you know, it's been a very short period of time. I kind of alluded to it earlier when I said that, you know, it wasn't a huge shift by the time the shunning actually happened, because it was already heading in that direction. So I think it's a mixture. You know, my mother, as an example, has health issues, and actually very nearly died late last year, unrelated to COVID.
Yeah, I'm very sorry.
And so, you know, when that's unrelated to COVID, and then we have a virus that, you know, is cutting a swath through, you know, the globe, I think that it brings it to my mind more. But outside of that, it doesn't change the reality of the shunning, whether it was good times or bad times. I think it would still be on my mind to some degree. But I think the fact that I couldn't, as it was, I couldn't go see them because of the pandemic. But now I can't go see them for a different reason. It kind of plays with me a little bit, but I don't know. I think it's somewhere in the middle. I don't know what it would have been like if it didn't happen during a pandemic. So I'll never know the difference, I suppose.
Yeah. And I think for me, it's not really been harder because I've been shunned for over 11 years, so it hasn't really been that much harder. The pandemic didn't really change much in that sense, but what it did change was family members like my grandma were was upping her game in contacting me to try and, even though she was shunning me, contacting me over and over again to try and convince me that this is the end. It's here now, and that I need to return, and that's the only way I'm gonna. Because she can't deal with the fact that she is convinced the end is now, and this is the last chance, and then she'll never get to see me again.
Right.
That's not restricted to y'all's side that believe that either. I think that that's a Abrahamic idea right now, that this is the wrath of God or whatever, and this is the beginning of the end or whatever. But everything, there's always been something that has been the beginning of the end. But this is just the new train to jump on, I believe.
Yeah, exactly.
But I also do believe that this could be the beginning of the end. I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever played those virus games or whatever, the outbreak games, but we are one step away from wipeout. I truly believe, like, if this thing were to turn in any sort of bad way, like, other than just not or super spreadable, but also super harmful, that could be a real bad, real quick.
But on that, hasn't always been that way for humanity, though, Fad. We're always one move away from complete wipeout, whether it be pandemic, whether it be a global extinction event of some sort, whether it be
I think
something
it's just
from
really
outside.
in our face right now. Like, really in our face. It's affecting our day-to-day lives more than most things have in a long time.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, it's always harder when you're actually having to deal with it in personally in your own life. Yeah,
and it's more scary. Like, I remember when 9/11 happened, and yeah, I mean, I guess I was younger, and I guess I was kind of afraid of terrorists, but it never seemed like it was going to happen to you. It was just this thing that was happening in places. But this, yeah, like, every time you go out in public, you're like, oh shit, did I catch the cough? You know? I don't know.
yeah.
It's very real.
I'm a little congested at the moment, and I'm wondering, do I have the virus? I can't even have sniffles without wondering if.
Yeah,
I know.
I think
I know what you
all
mean.
of us can attest to that. I think all of us have had some bug over this year that we would usually always have anyway each year. But then we're wondering, could it be? Oh, is this the end? Is this me done for now? Am I going to be in hospital in the next week and not being able to breathe?
Well, and I think with that being the reality that it is at the moment, what people really don't need is someone saying, "Oh, this is just the beginning of God's wrath against you personally." By the way, not to mention the billions, but it's you personally because of what you've done. I think taking advantage, sort of hijacking trauma and tragedy that people are going through, just the same way in a different from a different direction as many religions, and especially I'd say witnesses will say, oh, this person just had a death in the family, this person just had some sort of tragedy, let's go talk to them about the hope for the future. You know how you're going to see that person again? Join us. So whether it's fear mongering or false hope, I think things are bad enough without augmenting it through, false ideology.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think that's built into it. There are bad actors that are out there pushing for that in order for their own personal gain, but I think that it's just built in for it to be that way because
Yeah.
that's how it's going to keep people, you know?
Yeah, the fear mongering is a big part. It's not just Jehovah's Witnesses. It's all religions do this fear mongering. Maybe it's to a different degree with certain religions, but it's how they in today's world where there's a lot more atheism, there's a lot more disbelief. They have to use this fear mongering to get people when they're at the weakest. Get people when they're going to be more susceptible to. To hoping that something is going to happen that's going to fix everything. I mean, it would be nice to see if, if something like that did happen and, God was real and there was this afterlife, but with no evidence to support it, I personally, I don't see why you need to have that, like you said, Jared, false hope in something.
I just wanted to do a quick shout out to Joshua Archon in the chat and Skids the Clown mentioning that he's still around and he's survived all of the end of days. And, so have we. Y2K, we were there,
2012.
he likes to think he's super
yeah, the
old.
2012. I forgot about that. I was thinking about it a couple of months ago, actually.
Gosh.
What was all that
Didn't they
about
make a
again?
movie about
It
that?
was-
Mayan calendar, I think.
Mayan calendar. That was it. Yeah.
Something like the Mayan calendar stopped at 2012. I never fully understood, but I just remember thinking it didn't make a lot of sense.
They keep
Yeah.
moving the marker on that one, I'm pretty sure. I think that one's still around. They're like, oh, well, it was just not interpreted correctly this time or that time or whatever. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
I think
that
I
one,
watched a
I think
video.
that one's still floating around.
I think I watched a video that was trying to describe something about the Dark Ages and 300 years difference of rewritten history that never happened. So it's going to happen in 2312, not 2012. Something like that.
Yeah, they're all
Oh,
always
that's 300
rereading.
years then. That's amazing. New
Yeah.
lease on life.
We've got a time for a swift one anyway.
Just like religion, they'll, curtail around whatever they can to get their point proven. So,
Yeah, exactly. There was something I wanted to actually ask you, Jared. You might not know because you were inactive at the time, but
Sure.
your disassociation didn't come through till December.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you know anything about how it was for witnesses in the organisation this year? Was any information feeding through to you?
Yeah, a little bit. Are you thinking of quality of life with the Zoom meetings or anything in particular?
Yeah, like the quality of life, like different subtle changes in the teachings, things like that. Because of the pandemic and things.
Well, I know that there's been, and we can kind of see this from their videos too, but this ramped up focus on obedience. In fact, let's see if I can pull it up because I was just having this conversation with somebody on Reddit who's actually still in. But while I get that up, so I'll say this, and this very well could just be a perspective I'd have anyway. But when the announcement was made, I got a link to the Zoom meeting, and so I went in there. My primary purpose was to record the announcement, so I'd have it for my records and I can look back on it. But I was astounded. Everybody's supposed to have their camera on. I was astounded by how lifeless people looked. And I wonder, I mean, these are people I grew up with, I spent 20 years in. And many of the people that I still recognize. And I just couldn't believe. Not only was it robotic, which I've forgotten the monotony of simple questions and simple answers. What are we going to learn in next week's study in chapter 20? I mean, unbelievable. But the way that they looked on the camera, really struck me. So I wonder if that has something to do with the quality of life. But um, what this person had said, though, if I can find it, um, gosh, Zoom fatigue. Let's see. Yeah, it says people are scared. The organization is strongly encouraging everyone to keep to themselves, stay on Zoom. Um, and then apparently gossip has taken an uptick.
Mm.
Um, so it sounds to me like it's just a lot more restrictive. Kind of the feeling that you might have from being able to balance out your religious obligations with going out and doing other things. You don't have a lot of those other things now. If your fix was going to a movie theater on Saturday night, you probably don't have that now. Or if you do, doesn't necessarily feel the same. So it doesn't quite surprise me that that seems to be the effect.
So it seems to be that they're doing a major clamp down on on making religion the only part of your life. Using the opportunity that this year's provided for that.
Exactly.
So, do you think that could be because they're looking to ramp up their ministry efforts at the end of all of this?
Gosh, I don't even know how they do it at this point. But I think this is what popped to mind. I don't know about ramping up ministry efforts because I think they're going to have a steep incline trying to get back and be knocking on people's doors again like they were. But what popped to mind was that I think, and there's been some debate about this, of course, but in my personal opinion, I think that the leaders of the organization, to at least some degree, do believe the things that they're saying.
Yeah.
And so I think they're preparing for a great tribulation that's never going to come. I think they really believe that they're going to end up being, starring in their own bunker videos by the end of
Yeah, I was going to bring up the bunker videos because they've in the last the December broadcasting episode they was it it wasn't Stephen Tony Morris showed the bunker videos again and related to them, and in them bunker videos they mention that the ministry of teaching the good news would change from a message of good news to a message of doom. This is it. This is the end. You're gonna die now. So my previous question about whether they're going to ramp up their ministry efforts, could it be that if they do truly believe that it is the end, that's where they're going to the clamping down on obedience, so that no matter how strange it sounds to each witness, they will willingly preach this message of doom to everybody.
That's such a great point, and I think that they live, and obviously this doesn't apply to everyone, but from the people I knew, and even the people I've spoken to recently, because I kind of went through a long process to get disassociated. Along the way, I ended up having virtual dinner with an elder and his family, and so I could hear how they were talking about things. And I think they live in this doom mindset every day. The people I'm thinking of, at least, they have this sense of impending doom that follows them. And so I agree with you. And I also think that if that happens, if they get to a point where the message becomes doom and nothing else, that they're not going to be able to come back from that. They'll probably find some loophole internally, but the XJW community, as an example, will not forget.
It's going to be another 1975 scenario.
Exactly.
So we could see a lot of people leaving just out of sheer horror that they made this prediction and it just went horribly wrong for them.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was interesting. Of course, they're in decline at the moment after last year's numbers. But I thought there was, boy, I was whooping and carrying on. but what I find interesting about that is it's almost counterintuitive, because the thought that crossed my mind, especially when at the 2020 convention, David Splain went out of his way to say, people are coming back, and you have this fellowship person saying this, and really talking it up. In my mind, I thought, that doesn't surprise me, that with something as challenging as the times we saw last year and are continuing to face this year, it wouldn't surprise me that people who were indoctrinated like myself, and I did have those feelings of, what if this is truly the end, wouldn't have been surprised if people were to start going back. But the reality is, even if some did go back, it didn't act as a sufficient counterweight to the people who left. So something interesting to think about for whatever future iteration of this there will be.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they get out of it. And I know Lloyd did touch on it in one of his newer videos about some ways that they could spin this around to their advantage. But as you say, with them bigging it up last year, that there's loads of people flooding back, and then it suddenly, oh no, we're in decline now. Yeah, it'll be tough to see how they do get out of that one. There's a comment I actually like in the chat here. Cat the Humanist. They left a Watchtower comic book on my porch showing people fleeing from hellfire.
Oh, gosh. What will they think of next?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm just having a quick look.
Are we
see
gonna have a bit of
chat.
an after party after this?
Do you want to do a live after party after this, or?
I was just wondering if you wanted to.
Yeah.
I don't mind.
I know Josh wanted to jump on in the after party after this and have a chat with us all. I was interested in having a conversation with him.
Yeah, he's always an interesting person to have conversations with.
Oh, definitely. I love Josh. He's brilliant.
And Almost Atheist, we never got to have a proper introduction. My name is Justin, but as you can see, I go by the Fad, which is the friendly agnostic demon. So, pretty close to Almost Atheist there.
Yeah.
But, just wanted to let you know that's who I am, and it's very nice meeting you. I don't have all of the XJW information that you guys have, but I do have a kind of an outsider's viewpoint, and it's fun to listen to you guys talk about all this craziness.
Well, it's very nice to meet you too, and I'm glad that somebody doesn't have to have all the JW knowledge. So I'm glad you were spared of that. But
my memory's letting me down a bit, Fad. What religion was it again that you were indoctrinated into?
I was Protestant, basically Protestant. I also had some evangelical background, just depending on which parent I was with. Some of the evangelical events that I went to were some of the wilder things that I witnessed. But whenever I was basically Protestant, that's what I did all my studying in. That's what I thought that I was going to spend my life pursuing. But very apparently that did not happen.
So, obviously Protestantism is quite different from, say, Jehovah's Witnesses. What sort of similarities would you, when you've been listening to us talking, what similarities would you say there is?
Well, I mean, other than the fact that it's an Abrahamic religion, that's very similar, and there's going to be inherent similarities there. But like I said, there is a very strong aspect of social shunning, or even, completely, in some instances, they, will not have any sort of contact with them. It could be one of the worst sins, walking away from the church and the family and everything. So it really just depends on which situation you're in. But I think that that's one of the big differences that I find interesting, is that it is so situational. And it does seem like you guys have been saying tonight, you have family that's reached out to you, which is interesting to me because it's always kind of come across as that it's this very like shunning is this very very big thing to where you are cut off completely and there's just no contact.
Yeah, well, talking on that, so in the past, so for most of the 11 years that I've been out, shunning was like you are dead to them. They don't even they taught not even to think of you as being alive anymore. It actually took me back a little bit this year when I did get contacted by my grandma, because that's how I thought she thought of me. But it seems like the governing body are actually ramping up their efforts they're actually telling witnesses to contact disfellowshipped ones and disassociated ones, which sort of goes against, as I say, their previous teachings on it. It is one of the changes I have noticed this year.
Oh, it's very interesting. Like I said, I'm glad, it's always good to hear that a family member is letting their, or a friend is letting their guard down and accepting you for who you really are rather than pushing you away because you're not who they want you to be. So
Yeah.
And that's what I find one of the most appealing aspects of being away from those sorts of communities is whenever you're not a part of that community, it really is, well, I'm going to associate with somebody that accepts me for who I am, or I'm just not going to, and I can find other people to associate with. Um, so I don't know.
Well, and you're not forced to associate with the people that don't
Yeah.
accept you, which for people who feel the way the three of us do, but still find themselves in religion, may be stuck with. They're being told, oh, you can only associate with people in the religion when, they really don't believe it. And so they end up with people who they feel like aren't their friends, but they have no other choice.
Well, and that's something that I really can't relate to either because I was a believer, true blue hardcore believer. It wasn't until major changes in my life that I stopped believing, and it was such a sudden thing that, and I wasn't open about it. I really wasn't, I was open about it to my friends and stuff, to the people that were around me, but I didn't really have a lot of family base around me at that time anyways to like come out to. And by the time they finally realized that I wasn't a believer, some of them cared more than others, but like it wasn't such a big thing.
I'm gonna have to jump in here because the chat's having a right go at me right now because they asked a question and I didn't pose it. But moving on to a little bit more of a comic aspect of Jehovah's Witnesses, what about the go bags? Is a question posed to you, Jared.
Let's drop my phone. What about the go bags? I'm assuming we're thinking of the emergency preparedness kits that everybody's supposed to have in the event that the Great Tribulation catches them by surprise. Gosh, what about them? It's funny, actually, now that I think about it. I don't know where I'd seen this, maybe Reddit or something of that nature, but this sort of joke being made about military backpacks and how there's something wrong with having military backpacks. I can't remember why that was brought up, but the reason I'm bringing it up is because, as luck would have it, before I'd left, my mom had bought everyone in the family military backpacks that were full of emergency supplies for that very purpose. For me, it was, hey, if I cut myself, here's some extra Band-Aids. For them, it was, if God's about to kill everybody, we know where to go get our stuff and we can run to the car.
Hey, man, there's nothing wrong with a bug-out bag for whatever reason to have it.
That's true. So, good to have, and probably not for the Great Tribulation.
I
I
did come
wanted
across
to
a
address.
website.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, I did come across talking about the go bags. I did come across a website which seems to be funded maybe by Jehovah's Witnesses, because they had Jehovah's Witness Bibles and that as part of the bags and as well. So I'm not sure whether it was funded by Jehovah's Witnesses or not. But they actually have a website where you can actually purchase these ready to go JW go bags. And it was quite strange to me because I never had seen that when I was a Jehovah's Witness. We never had that, and I did watch one of Lloyd's videos where they were actually had the go bags at the Kingdom Hall, and they were doing sketches on the platform, about how to use the go bags, what to do in this scenario, what to do in that scenario, and showing what a good family would do with the about being prepared, and what a bad family would do about being prepared in the event of the Great Tribulation coming. It's very strange to me because that is not how it used to be when I was a witness.
None of this broadcasting era stuff is normal.
So you guys you're privy to all these broadcasts still? Like, it's not like, or is anyone privy to these broadcasts?
Some of them, yes. They have jw.org, and you can go on there. It's public website, and they will have videos on there, broadcasting episodes for each month, dramas and things like real world dramas and dramas set back in biblical times and things like that for you to watch. They also have the stuff for children, the propaganda, the bullshit propaganda that they have. What's it called again? Caleb and Sophia, yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, that is terrible. That I hate watching them. It makes me cringe. Some of the stuff that they're teaching children these days, it's awful.
Indoctrination to children is sick. Before I miss it, I wanted to bring up something in the chat. The middleman asked me. He asked me if I've ever been told I was never really a Christian. Well, that's a really interesting question because I'm pretty positive I've never been told I wasn't a Christian. Actually, I'm almost 100% positive the majority of people that knew me as a Christian would and know that I am not a Christian would probably say I am still a Christian and that I'm putting on this because I was so indoctrinated, and I have been told that this is all a show and that I am deep down still a Christian. But to your point of the question, have I been told that? No, I haven't. But considering my deep indoctrination, it is a internal question that has not gone away to this point. Like, was I ever really a Christian? And maybe not to the effect of why they're asking it, but maybe also, to a little bit to the same effect of why they're asking it. Was I ever really one? What is it to be a Christian? I don't know. Like, just because I felt like I was giving myself over. I don't know. I don't know much though. I'll say that. I just experience.
Yeah. On that point, EA Show is saying, here you were never really a real Christian. According to the Bible, it states that if you leave the faith, you were never one to begin with. Is in Timothy.
Yeah. I think that people like to interpret things however they want to interpret them to make them feel good.
Yeah, and it's a thing with the whole Christian faith. I would say is they have these set out these pre-prescribed excuses for any scenario. For instance, like someone leaving the faith, or it's not that they rejecting God. It's not that the thing. It's just that they were never really a Christian. They were, so there's no chance that we're gonna leave because we're real Christians.
The Bible does say that. EA is right, but you know how many summer camps I went to where the main speaker was an ex-atheist? Or what about the man himself, C.S. Lewis, that they all love to point to, the ex-atheist that um, what turned over to God? So to say, I don't know, to
Well,
say
he was
that you
never
can't
really
be
an
a part of
atheist.
it, and then exactly, that's exactly it. You can twist it and turn it to make it whatever you want it to be, and that's what religion is, in a lot of ways. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people that are subject to it and aren't the ones that are benefiting from it.
Yeah, and here Shaw's making that point right now. You better not leave atheism, because if you do, you were never a true atheist to begin with. It's in Lilith 2:13.
Gosh.
And I'm not even atheist. I'm not smart enough to say I'm an atheist. Like, there's just too many possibilities. Too many possibilities.
But I think the point is that it sounds crazy coming from the opposite angle, doesn't it? So if you were to say that about an atheist who's then gone into being Christian, to say that, oh, well, he was never truly an atheist, that it doesn't have the same sort of ring to it that it does to Christians when they're saying it about, ex-Christians.
You know what's interesting about what you just said too, Fad, is, you saying that you wouldn't want to deal the absolute, and say you're an atheist and definitively, don't believe in God, which I can.
It's not just God. It's nothing. I don't believe in anything. Just to be
Like religious wise, or what do you mean?
like anything. Like, I can't be sure of anything. I experience. I like to say, I I think, therefore I think. Like, that's all I know is I experience, and there are a lot of things that it seems are true, but I just can't say I know for sure are true, because
Sure.
I don't have the evidence to back it up. So there are too many possibilities to say that the one that I believe is true in my mind is the real one. I've already been fooled once.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and it occurred to me that um, that can be reverse engineered as well. That people, whether they go from atheism or not, to definitively saying that there is a God, kind of the same
Yeah.
thing. That they're assuming that to sort of borrow from what you said, they're assuming that they are smart enough to know.
Yeah.
And I think the true act of humility is just to recognize we can't know with something like that. Um, but it's so interesting because these things, this machinery of belief, affects people's lives so heavily. We're not discussing a favorite flavor of ice cream, or a favorite ride to Disneyland. We're talking about something that envelops people's lives, in some cases at least completely.
Do you believe that some people need it? I like to talk about the spectrum of smartness, and I really believe that there is a spectrum of smartness, and I lie somewhere around the bottom, but I'm definitely not as stupid as a lot of people I know. And I think that there are some stupid people that are, sometimes inherently violent because of their ability to process the world around them. And I think some people kind of need the some of the things that religion offer, even if it's not. It's hard to say because it is harming, but some people need something to tell them not to go kill somebody.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, uh, I think one of the greatest things about religion, is it provides hope, and it's something that a lot of people might not have otherwise. Um, Not to say they couldn't have it. I do think that we can have hope, independent from God, or religion, as the case may be. Some people, in my opinion, from people I've known, um, some people are religious and still don't necessarily believe in God. You
Yeah.
can recite the words, right? But that doesn't necessarily prove belief. But to answer the question directly, I think from my perspective, for example, I'll take my mother. Um, I had made the comment to her before because she would always say defensively when I'd try to explain certain things that I'd researched. She would say, "Well, you're never going to change my mind. You're never going to get me to stop believing what I believe." And I admitted to her I didn't think it would be wise for her to stop because I know what the cost is. Um, and she takes care of her mother. Her brother is getting up in age. Um, she wouldn't have really a ton of friends. So in her particular instance, I don't think those are roadblocks, full stop. But in her particular case, I didn't think it would have been wise for her to leave.
It would do more hurt. Yeah,
Yeah.
I completely see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
My grandma's doctor told her not to quit smoking cigarettes for the same reason. It's
Really?
like, yeah, you've been smoking so long, it would cause too much stress. You're already under more stress than you need to be. You should probably not think about stopping right now.
Yeah.
So on the point of hope, so religion obviously does create a lot of hope for people, and it does give people in certain situations, like your mother and like my grandmother, for instance, as well. It does seem to have a benefit to these people. Um, do you think that we could actually, and I do have a point on this myself, but do you think we could actually come up with a humanist element that could provide the similar level of hope?
Absolutely, and it's what I advocate for. I think that um, freedom needs to come along with hope.
Mm.
And if your hope is only contingent upon total servitude, as it were, then it's a bit of a Hobson's choice, really. But I think there's this midpoint. I think so for me, moving from hope that I was going to live forever in a paradise earth to now just hope that I can make a bit of a difference every day and have great people around me and have new experiences, like being here. It's really awesome to be talking to y'all right now.
Thank you
And
for being
just
here.
this, thank you
I
for
agree.
having me. So just this right here gives me hope for not necessarily a distant future, but I enjoy the moment right now. Now my point with this is that to transition from paradise earth to every day living in the moment and building my future, there was this midpoint where I didn't have hope. And I think getting past that is the hard part. If I thought my mom, as an example, could make it past that midpoint of no hope, if that were to be something that she would experience, it's hard to say. I haven't had this conversation frequently or recently, but if that's something that most people would go through, where there's this transition and in the middle of it there's no hope, I don't know if she'd be able to make it to the other side. But broad spectrum, the answer is yes. I completely agree that there's a humanitarian element or a humanist element that allows for hope just the same.
Yeah, the point I wanted to make on this was me and Josh have been talking in previous over the previous week or two, and we've started a new movement called the Promethean movement or Prometheanism, and one of the aspects of this new social movement, is to try and provide an alternative to religion, to religious hope in general. So instead of teaching about paradise earth or going to heaven after you die, and seeing your loved ones again in that sense, to create centres where people who are alive can record in archives, record their memories, record their thoughts, record their feelings. Maybe even adding technology like AI into that, so you could actually create maybe like a holographic version of yourself, of your personality, of everything that makes you you. So when you go, your family can go and access that, and always have that memory recorded there, so that they can so they don't have to think about some seeing you again. you're still there. You're in a sense.
Your
And
soul is there.
Yeah, they can. Yeah, your soul is there, um, yeah, and then they can draw from that. So they can draw from those ideas to help them in their lives, and obviously that goes from generation to generation. So you get to truly leave a legacy behind you for future people.
I love that.
Yeah, I think we're going to be having a little bit of chat about that in the after party. So probably best leaving that for the after party. But I think it's a really nice thought. To think that we could create, and then you mix that with globalism and you mix that with self-sustaining societies, where everybody's main goal is to progress society and to do the best that they can to help everybody else, like we have with humanism, the concept of humanism today. I think you've got a really beautiful future there for humanity.
Yeah. Well, and one thing that popped to mind too is, at least from my perspective, hope is dependent upon knowledge, and so it kind of goes into what we're telling people, and also the elements of their environment. Like, at least for me, being born in, and a lot of people who have been born into a religion, for it to have this sort of effect, that's all you know. Perhaps if you knew something else, if you had exposure to either multiple religions or, atheism, agnosticism, whatever, if you're exposed to a different philosophy, you might have chosen something different. But only having that one thing, I think that, again, like I said, without freedom, I think that makes hope a bit less fulfilling. And of course, really,
Yeah.
what matters at the end of the day is whether or not it's real. Regardless, and of course, Lloyd has talked about this extensively, that, there's a lot of this emotional element driving religion, or driving, with the witness case, the broadcasts and things like that. But the real question is it true? Is it correct?
Yeah.
And, what you just mentioned about the Promethean movement, it's focused on fact. It's focused on, what we know of somebody. So I think that on its own, if we're going to manufacture hope, I think it needs to start with knowledge.
Yeah, exactly.
I do.
Yeah, go ahead,
I will say I do believe there is knowledge. Like, I think that there's just multiple sides. One of the EA's favorite shows, there's a dichotomy within me. That's why I call myself an agnostic demon. What kind of demon is agnostic? They're purely that they're atheists. They know that God exists. But what I don't even. I lost my train of thought.
You're
Dichotomy.
saying that you believe in knowledge.
I just wanted to bring up the word dichotomy, basically.
I
Shout out
wish
to
I had one of
EA.
the EA show's banners for that. That would be brilliant. No, there's a point that Super Ice is making in the chat. So many witnesses I've known, like your mum, are experiencing Pascal's wager. They reason to themselves, it doesn't hurt me, so I will live this way. I think that's quite a good point.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to what you'd said, Fad, about experience. So many things in life are subjective. And so, at least on the basic level, it does definitely validate some people's decisions to stay. It's also like what you said, though, Borg, a bit ago, that is if it's harmful. We keep coming up against these two walls, right? On the one side, if something's harmful, should it continue? On the other hand, if it's not harmful to everyone, then what? What happens next? Because, for example, my family is 3 people, so 4 counting me. So if it's not harmful for 3 of them, but it is harmful for me, needs of the many, needs of the few, kind of thing.
Well, what's worse, a newly converted, angry atheist, or a harmless believer that, isn't really out there pushing their belief on anybody. They just believe in Jesus and God. Or the atheist that's out there like angry at everybody and everything and just being a total dick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And good point, Susan. Sunk cost fallacy as well. It is for many JWs.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got the, Pascal's wage, as Super Ice mentioned. If it doesn't hurt me, I'll live this way. But then if you couple that with the sunk cost fallacy, where, well, I've put so much into this, I'd have to unravel my entire life to be able to get out of this. If even if I do have doubts, uh, it's sort of you couple those two together. It's sort of easy to understand why more witnesses don't leave.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wonder how many witnesses are stuck on the inside who do have doubts, but because of Pascal's wager and the sunken cost fallacy, they just keep burying those doubts time and time again.
Yeah. Well, and you hear too, well, where would we go, Lord, kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
And so when there's no replacement, I mean, it takes, and it's something that for me is still very much work in progress. It takes work. When you've spent 20 or 30 or 40 or however many years, even if it's 2 years, 1 year, inside an organization, a group of people that tell you everything else and everyone else is going to be bad for you ultimately. It's probably not going to be a smooth transition to leave that and then find yourself in, um, having tons of friends and being able to, have a busy schedule, a social life, what have you, or hope for the future. I know for me, even now, I mean, today, even as we speak, it's still very much a part of me to think, oh, well, I could have, I would be perfect one day and I could live in paradise and I could see people that I lost again. It's reflexive for me now because that's what 20 years in will do. Um, doesn't make it true, but it is comforting. Even in those moments, knowing that it's not what I believe, I still find comfort in it. So it's tough, and I feel for the people who, are divided about whether or not they should leave.
yeah, exactly. That's one of the things that I do find myself thinking about a lot is the victims that are still caught in this cult. And it's people that me and you have loved, and all of our lives, and and to think that they may never get out, um, is something that it's a sad thought, but at the same time we just have to be relieved that we got out ourselves, and that we can now you know try our very best to help other people to have the same freedom that we came to.
I just kind of took notice that the conversation has been precluded around the idea that it's the religion is there to save you from death. It is not there to give you, or not save you from death, but to save you from, whatever it is, eternal damnation or not being in the presence of God or whatever it is. It is not there to give you things to benefit from, like on the day to day. The
Mm.
people that are following it are predominantly, at least from what we've been talking about, are predominantly following it out of fear. So
Yeah,
that's kind of funny when that it preaches to be this um, religion of, hey, we this is going to better your life, and well, I'm sure if you took the statistics of it, it doesn't better the majority of people's lives, um, but it does. A whole talk all comes
yeah.
down to fear.
The majority of religion, as you say, it's out of fear. It's out of fear of the future. So they're living constantly in the future. They're doing things today to better what they think they're doing today to better a future that may or may not happen.
Hmm.
And that's
Treasures
nowhere
in
to
heaven.
live your life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would be interested to hear from each of you on this. I find myself still doing that. I mean, even my friends know me as like unnecessarily strategic because I'm thinking about what's happening a year from now as though it was happening right now. I can't seem to get out of that because at this point it's like hardwired into my personality. But aside from whatever personality I have, you know, do you find that happening in your lives where you're still caught in either thinking about the future more than is necessary or some other inclination that kind of springs from religion?
Uh, it's kind of funny. I think that nothing. I've always had at least my adult life, I've not been afraid of death. Maybe as a child I was afraid of it, but even whenever I was religious, I wasn't afraid of it. Especially whenever I was religious, I wasn't afraid of it because I thought that I was super fucking special and that I was going to be, you know, treated as such. And now that I left it, I look toward it as a reprieve and just as something as natural as taking a shit in the morning. So like I said, I don't think that anything changed in that manner except for the the basis for it or something.
Yeah.
In my case.
So I think there's an advantage to thinking in the future. We need to think, so far into the future to know where it is, where we want to go, what we want to do, how we want to plan the present. So you need to think a little bit into the future to know where you want to be. But I don't think I think too far into the future. Not like I was like within Jehovah's Witnesses, always thinking about it's okay to think. I think the point I'm trying to make is it's okay to think in the future if you have evidence that future is possible.
Great point.
Whereas religion is not based on on what we have any evidence to prove is actually possible. So why try to focus on trying to get to something that's unattainable?
Yeah.
Oh, because it makes you a better person. It's not because you're afraid of the punishment. It's because following the tenets makes you a better person, and it's going to bring about a more peaceful earth, and it's definitely shown to be true. That's sarcasm if no one picked up on it.
It makes me think about how, and I'm sure plenty of religions do this. I need to learn more about other religions because I feel like all I can reference is witnesses. But witnesses will pat themselves on the back for all the compliments they'll get from every convention season that comes around. They'll say, oh yeah, this superintendent at this place said how clean you guys are. If everybody was like you, that kind of thing. And so to what you just said, Fat, the idea that because you're so I think of it as a carrot and stick, right? There's a hell of a lot of fear, but there's also this idea that, well, things will be better right now than they could have been. Nothing's necessarily going to be in the positives. No one's being promised $1 million in the brand new car, but they're just not going to be in the negatives. And everyone in the world, everyone outside of the religion, they're in the negatives. And by the way, they're going to die at Armageddon one day. So you're staying neutral, if not in the positive, and you're not going to have to die in the future. So isn't that great? That kind of mentality. And I think they start to almost create for themselves, and again, I'm sure this is plenty of religions, and plenty of people that are non-religious that just have this mindset, but they start creating advantages for themselves that may not actually be there, just to validate, to rationalize the way that they're doing things. Because I think that's what I've seen, at least with my family, a lot of rationalizing and not a shred of fact to go with it.
I definitely created advantages for myself in my mind that I did not have, or else I would have probably gone to college and had a way different path than I had. So,
me too.
Yeah. How it is whenever you think God's gonna take care of everything for you.
So I wanted to take the conversation slightly in a different direction. So to both you, Fad and Jared as well. Um, for those who we've left behind who are still in the religions, and that. Do you think that there is a way, a specific method that we could use that would be best effective at helping nurture the doubts within the minds of those people, doubts that they may be having, to try and help get them to the freedom that we have? Or do you think it's a little bit not worth it? There's too many dangers.
Presumptuous. My wife is a Christian.
Presumptuous,
I love. No, I'm saying it is. Why do I get to? Why should I be planting seeds of doubt into her mind? She's not walking around trying to change my perception of things. It is her perception. I love her for who she is. I do promote skepticism in all ways, and I think that that's the only way that you can truly come across as completely blameless, is to just promote skepticism. Don't push your idealism on anybody, because your idealism probably isn't right anyways. Just promote questioning. That's all you can do.
Yeah, well said. Well said.
Yeah, for me, this has been heavily debated. And the debate continues. The war rages on. I have no definitive answer as far as what I think a right course of action would be. I will say, as much as I hate to say it, because I would like it to be the opposite, but to borrow from Lloyd, there's no magic bullet or silver bullet, however he puts it. And so here's my thing. And I have to reemphasize that this is only my perspective.
Of course.
I think that for me, in my personal life, if people are not allegiant to fact, they're a threat. And I may not be able to see exactly how they're a threat. But I think that there are some things, even perhaps what we're dealing with now with the pandemic, that there are some things that if you don't do the math, if you aren't willing to consider the facts at our disposal, and it takes effort, by the way, it's not always just a Google search away. Depending on what it is, it could take some lifting. But if you don't consider the evidence, if you don't consider the facts, it could be to your detriment.
Do you have kids?
I do not. No.
Wait until you have kids.
So tell me more about that, because
I'm just saying, are you going to plant seeds of doubt into their mind? What if they want to believe? Is there going to be a problem with you?
That's an excellent question. So to be honest with you, that's part of the reason I'm on the fence about whether or not I want to have kids. Short of accidents, to purposefully have kids is not necessarily on the agenda at the moment, because I'm so heavily divided on that. I don't know. Because see, here's the thing, and this is the problem, at least for me, that there's some level of trauma associated with religion for me. And so in the context of religion, if I were to have kids, I would want them to be able to choose for themselves, except I'd want them to make the choice I made. Right? And so it's like, that's not how that works. Freedom means they get to choose, not me. So I try to, I'll put it this way, I try to keep myself out of situations where I have to make those kinds of decisions. But in my social circle, on the one hand, I want people who challenge me and who make me think outside of the box, which is why I enjoy conversations like this. On the other hand, I want people who share the same core values, which you can have both. I just think it's a bit challenging, especially when you get to the more controversial topics like religion. So that's my long-winded answer to a simple.
I think I was.
I have a thing on this as well. I think there's a difference between freedom in fact and freedom in fallacy. Now, and with religion, there's no evidence to back it up. There's no evidence there. It's not fact, any of the teachings that they have. So should we allow people to have the freedom to choose falsehoods, to choose something that is not factual? Because that is just going, in my mind, and this is my personal opinion, that's just dumbing people down. That's just dumbing down future generations into, and that's not a path that I want to see the human race going down. Now, freedom in fact is different, and so you can have, as long as it's factual, yes, you should have the freedom to choose that, but you should be allowed to criticize anyone that's choosing fallacy.
Yeah.
I see criticize. I thought, I was wondering where you're going with that. I was like, well, I mean, you're just not going to allow these people to make stupid decisions, because I definitely don't agree with that. I think that dumb people should make stupid decisions all the time. Yes, it is. That's why, you know, they're dumb. Or it's, you know.
And I'm not saying religious people are dumb. I'm
well,
saying
no, I'm not.
It's a slow
I'm saying
process that will eventually lead to that if we let it go out of control. And criticism is the route that you would take to get past that. So the more you criticize someone, the more doubts they're going to have over their worldview.
I definitely don't believe that they're dumb either. I know that came off. There are plenty of religious people that have way more knowledge than I do, so I will definitely say that. I know that sometimes I say things that come off differently than I mean them.
No, I was just clarifying on my point that I didn't mean that they were dumb. I wasn't saying you.
Well, I'm glad you did though, because I didn't.
So one thing, just to kind of circle back to the idea of, you know, sharing thoughts with people we care about and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. To address a couple things in the chat. First, I just have to say, Super Rice, that's far too kind of you, more than I deserve. But the middleman, talking to all three of us, you know, he or she believes that the a silver bullet, of course, the chat would disappear. The silver bullet was. I'm a professional, guys.
I've got it here if you want me to read it out.
That Jesus falsely predicted the world would end in his generation is a silver bullet. So, you know, see, that's the thing is, I've often been wondering what will do it for somebody. What will get them to that point? Because what we're talking about here with freedom and fact, freedom versus freedom and fallacy, if it's going to be freedom and fallacy as an example, which there's plenty of that running around these days, then what's the point? You know, I mean, we've just basically unraveled the fabric of reality. Anything goes. There's no point in anything anymore. And that's of course again my perspective. Versus fact. And if it's going to be about facts, then shouldn't the research that we've done, if we go to somebody and say, hey, I know this is what you believe right now, but there's something I've found that I think you'd be interested in. It's hard for me to accept that some people really aren't interested, and they don't want to know. And so the reason I quoted that comment is just because everyone's silver bullet seems to be different. And I wish I had a master sheet of what would go with whom, because I think, you know, in the witness organization, you kind of challenge, if you're fated, you're challenging your ability to maintain contact, as an example, with your family by sharing things with them. If you've disassociated or disfellowshipped, you probably don't have the opportunity. So it's just tough to try to figure out, you know, what the right course of action is. But,
almost atheist. You're right. It is all subjective, and that's a great comment to look on, because I actually had something to ask to the middleman. Has the middleman talked to Richard? Because there, you know, you can mental gymnastic this anyway. Richard Manson would say that it just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, so, Richard is a character. If you haven't spoke to him, if you haven't spoke to him,
I bring him up every time because I love the guy.
Definitely interesting to have a conversation with him. Yeah.
Oh, I think, you know, if he is, I'm not sure, and I'm not going to say whether he's a bad actor, if this is like something he really believes. I actually kind of do believe that this is something he really believes, but I think that it shows how easy it is to take something and mentally gymnastic it into exactly whatever you want it to be. And he has this whole amazing whole new religion based off the Bible.
Well, we won't go too much into it
no
because
one
I'm
has.
actually I'm trying to get him onto the show
I'm
as a
sorry.
guest. So
I'm sorry about that,
yeah.
but I'm
No,
just
it's okay.
the idea is just that it can be, you know, anything can be gymnastic to anything else, and
yeah,
it's all
hopefully
subject.
hopefully we're going to get him on the show in the next month or so. So
Yeah.
give him a
That
chance
would be my
to
question to
explain his views fully.
Well, if the middleman hasn't heard of him, that would be a great time for him to come and be taught about this whole new ideal that Richard has.
So another point I wanted to ask you, Jared, was when you were realizing that Jehovah's Witnesses was not the way for you, was not the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any what influences were best for you in that course of action?
So there's 2 points in time where that are relevant to look at. Firstly, when I started fading. Secondly, obviously, the road to disassociation. So I'll start with fading. The short answer is I do not know. I kind of like what I said at the outset, that there was, my instinct was that there was something wrong. I think a contributory factor for me was that, I started to have, so the only exposure to people in the world, in other words, not witnesses, that I'd had was online playing games. I've always been a gamer. And so as I started to realize these are normal people, and more normal than I was, mind you. These are normal people who enjoy the same things I enjoy. I didn't see how they could possibly be evil. Neither did I see that they deserved dying terribly at Armageddon, right? So as I started, pondering that, and also there were things that I just didn't agree with. I never understood why I couldn't have a beard. I still don't understand how so many people, however many guys there are in the witnesses, how there hasn't always been a revolt. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't see how without biblical backing they can manage that. So there were plenty of things like that came to mind. Now, the road to disassociation, factors were first and foremost realizing I was still afraid because of religion. That was the biggest thing for me, that it was still having an effect on my life. If the effect had stopped when I'd faded, if the effect was simply from sitting in the Kingdom Hall listening to talks, then I probably wouldn't have had an issue after I faded. Everything would have been copacetic. I could have managed, right? But realizing I was still afraid and thinking daily about what if I'm wrong, told me I needed to do research. And that was the mistake, from my perspective, that was the mistake I'd made 7 years ago, that I didn't do the research. But ancillary factors for me, I mean, if it's a research topic, 607 BCE. That's the silver bullet for me. That's why, I did a video on it, because I'm so passionate about that. Now, anytime I see that pop up on the XJW Reddit, I'm all over it, because it's something you can calculate. It's something that's really quite inarguable when you do the math. But aside from that, I think even aside from all of that, the Bible itself disproves the belief system, and the things that go on inside the organization, that even the ones that are based on the Bible, that the Bible itself has morally questionable things going on. The whole first half of the Bible is morally questionable things.
I love the Pentateuch. It's my favorite.
Gosh, it's something. And so yeah, those are the factors for me. It was a long road overall. I didn't realize how long the road was until I was done with all of it. But it took 7 years to really unpack all that.
Yeah. So first, the gamer thing, I completely understand that. I've been a massive gamer all my life as well. well, since leaving Jehovah's Witnesses, wasn't really something you could
Mm.
couldn't really play
Not really.
GTA 5 and that and
Yeah, exactly.
in there.
You play
But
Candy Crush, and that was about it.
yeah, that was about it. Yeah, or Tetris. I remember I played that as a kid.
Hey, Tetris is awesome. Okay, don't go knock Tetris.
Yeah, so I completely understand that. But for me, the 607 thing, that was never really a big issue for me. I didn't really understand the 607 thing when I was a kid, and I think it was something I never really took on. But for the viewers, could you explain quickly what
Yeah.
the 607 problem is?
Yeah, so Jehovah's Witnesses believe we're living in the last days, and that the last days started in 1914. And the idea that the last days started in 1914 is based on something called the Seven Times Prophecy in the book of Daniel in the Bible, and using their own interpretation of that prophecy and their own calculation that starts in 607 in their minds in 607 BCE, when they believe the ancient city of Jerusalem fell to the Babylonians. From that starting point, using a special calculation, using their own interpretation, they come to 1914. It's kind of complex, so I hope that's concise enough as a short explanation. But the math is flawed. So just think of any equation. 1 plus 2 will never equal 2, right?
Yeah.
You can't have that. So as flawed as that equation is, so too the idea that Jerusalem fell in 607. Secular history records 587. And so it wasn't, to your point, it wasn't an issue for me growing up. I didn't, I just took what I was given. But then, when I was watching Lloyd's channel, that really did it for me. Because I kind of grazed the subject in one of his videos and then started doing more research. But yeah, so that's the quick explanation. Hopefully that was
Well, thank you very much. That was
It-
that was a brilliant explanation for that.
Is it true that 1 plus 2 will never equal 2?
Who's to know? Everything is subjective after all.
Now, let's quit with the conspiracies. So there's a message from M&K in the chat. At Almost Atheist, your video on 607 is excellent. Looking forward to your next one.
That's very kind. Thank you. It's nice to hear from you guys again.
I'm gonna have to check out your videos. I have not seen any of your stuff on Almost Atheist, so I look forward to seeing this.
That's kind of you. There's only one, so
Yeah. Well,
just
It's
are you,
absolutely brilliant content.
You're gonna put out more though?
I should. Yeah, I should. That's the short
You
answer.
want to, or you should?
Both. I want to. I want to make it valuable for viewers, and I've never thought of myself as somebody. I'm not a huge fan of being in front of the camera. So I need to put some effort into it. I have some good topics, I think, but yeah, I need to put some effort into it.
Hey man,
Yeah,
just
well,
keep at it.
I absolutely loved your first video that you did, and the amount of effort that you put into that was phenomenal.
Thank you very much.
I would say it's probably better. That one video was probably better than all of my videos that I made, that I pre-recorded up until that point, all in one. So it was absolutely, I loved it.
Not even close, because with your videos, I also get to. It's like I'm playing a game. It's like I'm on Twitch watching these videos. So it's perfect.
I will do some more like that in the future. I'm just focusing on this at the moment, live streaming and that. Got quite a lot going on.
There it is.
Cat the Humanist is asking, what is the beard thing? I think we'd all like to know what the beard thing is.
Yeah, I'd still like to know. So short version is that men in the Jehovah's Witness organization are not allowed, at least in the Western world, are not allowed to grow beards. The reasoning is frankly a bit unclear, but more or less their reasoning is, good dress and grooming. So they feel that having a beard would be, less dignified, I suppose. Don't quote me. It's not a quotation from the organization, but less dignified than being clean shaven. That doesn't, though. What they've said is that it depends on your local, more or less the cultural, um, you know, viewpoint on it in your surrounding area, because in other countries, more toward the east, it seems to be acceptable. So that's part of the thing that I've always had a problem with is either God says that you can't have a beard, or he says that that you can, or that you don't care. But it's not. How can it be one way over here and a different way over there if there's a biblical principle? But
Well,
it should be noted there is no biblical principle.
Of
So in
course,
short,
you
it
would
be
grow a beard, and he would make you have to shave it off with razors, because that just makes complete sense.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And
Gosh.
Susan's making a good point there as well, which is a point that I think Lloyd has made in the past on his videos. Russell had a beard. The Bible students emulated that. And then Rutherford hated it and then banned the beards. So it's probably something that stems from the Rutherford days as well.
Which means, by the way, when you look into that further, that there's just this rivalry from the very beginning. This
Definitely.
political rivalry almost,
Yep.
Yeah, M&K is saying beards are not allowed, but beard fractions are allowed.
I used to work in an industry where beards were not allowed, but mustaches were, which was very interesting to me. Like, why a mustache and not a beard? But
well, that's one thing to note too, that not to dwell on it over much, but what's interesting about the beard thing with witnesses is, if they're going to make the stance that it's about how people feel about it around where you live, that it's sort of a cultural standard, or however you want to look at it, then their policies would update. Because to your point about you used to work for a company that didn't allow beards, that was my first job, and then it seemed to be right. I'm from California, so that's where that took place. And of course, California being as progressive as it is, things were changing very rapidly around the time I started working. So now, you used to not be able to have visible tattoos, not be able to have visible piercings, not be able to have a beard even at places like Disneyland. Now you can. So as everything else, here they of course speak disparagingly of the world. As everything in the world updates, their policies remain the same, even the ones that don't have a biblical backing. And so I find that interesting, because it's a principle, not just the situation, that so much of the religion is outdated, and they just, even the things that they do update, they don't make a ton of sense. So
Yeah, exactly. And Cat the Humanist is saying similar thing. The beard thing alone should make you wonder. It's little small things like that. What I can't get my head around is if you're going to teach objective morality, you're going to teach, God says this absolutely, and this is the way it's meant to be, then why should relativistic conditions, change that objectivity? And it's not just Jehovah's Witnesses that do this. Every religion does it all throughout time. What happened in the Bible? How do you explain the Bible talking about slavery, about genocide, about incest, and all of these things? And the answer that the religions give is, oh, well, back then it was okay. Okay, well, your morality is not objective then. It's relative.
exactly.
they love playing both sides of the card. Absolutely. And it's the same reason why in Protestantism there's so many different sects of it, because they love to say, well, this is what this means for sure, and then somebody else says, well, no, this is what this means. But whenever it comes to something else completely different, they're like, oh, well, you can't know what that means. So it's all ridiculous.
And then they'll say,
it's subjective to whatever they can pull off.
and then
If
they'll
you
remind
can't know
people not
what
to have their own interpretation.
Yeah.
And if you can't know what something means, if it's not for us to know, it's for this possibly existing being that we're not sure that exists. It's for him to know, not for us. Then why the hell are we even taking a position on it?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, well, we're coming up to 1 hour and 50 minutes now, so I'll be wrapping it up in around about 5-10 minutes or so. So if there's any points that you want us to cover quickly, leave it in the chat, or if there's anything that you, Fad, or you, Jared, want to quickly get in.
Well, always wrap it up. It's the safe way.
Okay, well, if I can wrap it up now if you want to,
No.
and we can go
No,
to
no,
the
no, no.
after party.
I don't necessarily want to wrap it up now. I was just playing on your words. I'm sorry. I'm dumb. I find myself hilarious.
The sarcasm bounced off me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not even going to go into it until the after party.
Just suffice it to say, safety first.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'd just like to say, this has been an absolutely amazing conversation. I wasn't expecting it to go this well tonight, and thank you very much, Jared, for coming on and, helping this amazing conversation that we've had.
Well, thank you both for having me. It's my first live stream, so definitely a good experience for my first, and an excellent conversation as well. I think, just something to say from my end. It's shows like this that helped me make the decision to leave religion. I know that a lot of people, regardless of which religion they come from, they might struggle to open themselves up to, things like this, whether they are worried about apostasy or just anything that is different from what they're hearing from their own pastor or what have you. But like I said, it's shows like this that really helped me, and I think that there's a lot more people to help out there. So you guys are doing excellent work, and I'm grateful to be here to be a small part of it.
Thank you very much, and I would love to have you on future shows as well. If you're ever wanting to expand into some more live streams and some other topics and that.
Absolutely.
Fad can't always be around because of his family and that. He's got a lot of other responsibilities. So it would be nice to have you on as like a co-host and that in the future.
Absolutely.
Right, so before I wrap up, have you got a message that you want to leave to maybe any Jehovah's Witnesses that may get to watch this, or anyone who's struggling with coming out of the religion right now?
Yeah, so a message for people who are questioning and might have doubts: do your research. Do your research and be thorough about it. Anything that is based on fact can be proven, and so make sure that there's proof. That's the biggest thing I could say. And then as far as people who might be struggling and want to leave or in the process of leaving, have left and they're still struggling, don't do it alone. Find people, especially people who can understand. Friends, things like that are important, but also the XJW Reddit is great. Watching channels like this is great to know that you're not alone, because I think, at least for me, I started off feeling that way, that it couldn't possibly be that there was anyone else who was going through what I was going through. That's kind of what our minds tell us sometimes. The reality is much different. So you too, do your research, but don't do it alone. Grab support and start building your life, because you're free and you deserve it.
Well, thank you very much. That was absolutely beautiful.
I like it.
Yeah. Joshua the Archon is asking to you, Jared, why don't you stay on for the after party for a bit? We can converse if you wish.
By all means.
Yeah, you're gonna have to bring the snacks though, Joshua the Archon loves snacks, and I see that refrigerator right behind you. So
I can cook up a storm, and I make an excellent lemon cake. So you might be cooking with Collins here pretty soon. That's my last name. So.
all right.
Well, you've got Josh drooling now, I'm guessing, in the background there. You'll never see him without a snack. Right, so I will wrap that up there. We'll go off, and me, Fad, and Jared will have a chat for 10-15 minutes, then I'll start up an after party, and I'll take it live tonight. So, yeah, so please remember, everybody, ignorance is never bliss, and thank you very much to all those who are in the chat. That's it's been brilliant having you here as well tonight. Obviously, it's all about the viewers.
Absolutely. And assimilate skepticism. Isn't that what we like to say?
Yeah, so I have two
Assimilation of
catchphrases now. The mine, which is ignorance is never bliss, and then assimilation of knowledge. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah. Borg Skeptic, assimilation of knowledge. Yeah.
That's what it is. Oh yeah. Oh, I love them both.
All right then. Thank you very much, everybody, and good night.
Bye.